Welcome back. I ended the previous stream because I'm still trying to set my screen to be able to see some Q&A people might be asking, but interesting enough, I'm not able to see my screen. All right, great. Good morning, Anita. Thank you for joining in. Yeah, good morning. So yeah, at least this is now working. Let me just try to finalize the setup. Okay, great. Good morning, Anita. Thank you for joining in. So, if you are joining this live, this is like our second live since we kick-started. And in our earlier live, we were discussing on how to strengthen your entrepreneurial abilities as well as entrepreneurial skills. So there is still a build up on this end. And if you're joining for the first time, my name is Njuguna Hilary. I'm an entrepreneur based in the coastal region of Kenya, that is somewhere in East Africa. And in this kind of live, I'm sharing more of my expertise, experience, the high and lows, but my focus is basically on the entrepreneurship bit. And we started this discussion last week, and this is mostly focused on if you want to become an entrepreneur and you want to start your business. So how do you get started? What are some of the key things you need to consider? So just a bit of background. So if I lost you in previous stream, we had discussed on 3 key ways on how you can be able to strengthen your entrepreneurial abilities and skills. And I meant this by saying you want to become an entrepreneur, but you have actually identified some areas of strength, which means you don't have as an entrepreneur. And since it's also advisable, you don't start your business or you don't start your enterprise until you are actually okay with that. So thank you, Anita, for joining in. I can see you're saying, good job you're doing. Question, do you think entrepreneurship is an inborn talent like sports or arts? Those who have it, and those that don't, just don't have it. Okay, wow, that's a very thoughtful question. So if you're in this stream, actually, that's something we can get started off as we continue building on how you strengthen your entrepreneurial abilities. Do you actually think the way Anita is saying is if entrepreneurship is more of an inborn skills, whereby you've seen famous, like she uses a good example of athletes, whether it's in football or in athletics, people have inborn skills and that's what makes them like better, or is it something that can be developed? So technically for me, I think it's an interesting area, or rather discussion, but these are my thoughts, honestly. So I actually think, well, there are cases which can actually support great entrepreneurs coming from very entrepreneurial families, and they have actually ended up ruling the entrepreneurship field. I actually think entrepreneurship for me, it's more of the skills, which means it's something that can actually be trained. Well, I'm not refuting that Some great entrepreneurs are born inherently with the ability to become great entrepreneurs. I actually think majority of entrepreneurs which we have in our country, in Africa or in the continent is they've actually developed their skills, their expertise over the time. That means they've actually sat down, maybe at one point or another, gone for an actual school, had a mentor, and actually they have been able to develop their skills and ability of the time. And just to pick it up on that, that's why we are here, and that's why you're asking yourself, which are ways which you can actually strengthen your entrepreneurial abilities. Because remember, if you actually are born with it, you don't need to strengthen it. But you also realize if you are born into something and you don't develop it over the time, that's why people say hard work beats talents. You'll see someone, they are very good at something, but if they have not taken time to sharpen what they are good at, then predominantly someone who actually didn't have the ability, but they were determined to become the next big thing in that area. They hone their skills, they work so hard, and ultimately they are able to trump the guys who are born with this case. So for me, I think entrepreneurship, it's more of development of those skill sets. It's more of, gaining the skills. And if you're joining us for the first time, thank you so much. My name is Njuguna Hilary. I'm an entrepreneur based in East Africa, and we are discussing ways which you can actually grow or strengthen your ability as an entrepreneur if you want to become an entrepreneur. So earlier on, we looked on the first three cases, and I'm looking, if you're seeing me looking down here, I'm referring to this manual. It's an SIYB manual, and is mostly one of the best manual which is used to train most of business expertise or consultants here in East Africa, even some part of South African region and a bit of African regions. So I find it very good to be referring in this particular case. So if you have any question as we continue this discussion, you can actually note it below. And you can also as well say hi. This is my first live, so it's not really a perfect live, trust me guys, but we are getting there. And yeah, we can be able to interact. And also, Anita, thank you so much for that amazing question. So we have looked, one way to strengthen your skill is learning from people who have, or the entrepreneurs before you, or people who are ventured in the field you want to be, whether it's, let's say, in Afrifama, in the poultry sector, in the manufacturing, or someone in the fashion industry, in the sports industry. You can actually learn from them. And we remember, so that you don't get confused, is before strengthening your expertise is you've actually asked yourself the first 9K questions we ask. And in case this is also a new concept, we have done a live before, and we have actually highlighted these questions starting from the passion, the stress level, decision-making level, the business management level, all the way to the finances level, even the people in your corner. So it's a very interesting key areas. And now you've actually now known that you want to become an entrepreneur, right? And you ask yourself those questions. But then there's a thing, you don't have a yes, which means there are still some areas of improvement. And this is why we talk, one, you need to learn from enterprises. These are entrepreneurs who have ventured into an area interested in. And the second, we talk about going for an online course. So going not just for an online course, sorry about that. You can either go for physical training or for an online course, and that way you can be able to boost your skill level expertise. The third one, which we discussed before we disconnected, was working as an apprentice, or just, I would say, even volunteering. So you've identified an industry or a key aspect you want to work on, which you know you're not good. Then most of the cases is, if you apply as an intern for most companies, even big companies, they actually tell you don't need to have that skill. You'll come in, they will train you, and what you'll do for yourself is, you give in the labor, they give you minimum wage, and you're good. So imagine for the first 3 to 6 months, you'll be able to strengthen your expertise. So by the time you're coming out to be able to start your business, then you have actually, in one way or another, gained the experience and gained the skill set for the same. Now, the next bit is, they're saying is, you need to read articles about businesses in your field. For example, newspaper, journals, either on the internet or libraries, to help you think about the problem these businesses are facing and their proposed solution. Now, this is an interesting bit. Right now, most of us, especially for millennials, if you're a millennial in the house or the Gen Z, we really read the old newspaper. I mean, the physical book like this one is becoming a thing of the past. But we have what we call like a superpower. We have internet, and this means you can be able to access information at a hand, at a go. So whether it's on X, whether it's on any social media platform, such as, from X, the way you mentioned, all the way to LinkedIn, all the way even to Facebook, or even IG, you need to actually read the business cases. And for me, I'll be honest, this is something that have worked for me. By reading through these cases, you'll actually be able to identify one, to know key things which they're actually talking here is the problem these businesses they are facing. Because anything right now in the social media is talked about. So whatever these companies they are facing, the problems, there's always someone out there talking about them. Even internally, they'll even tweet about them. And then you also learn about the solutions they are proposing or what they are working on. And now for you as an entrepreneur, if one of the key problems or the key solutions which have been proposed by these companies was your areas of improvement, then you can be able to learn through their own thinking and apply the same in your business. I hope that makes sense. Then the next bit they talk about is joining a small business association in your area or participate in the forum. So I've seen this. There's a shift whereby if you are a startup entrepreneur or you're starting a business, there are so many organizations or hubs coming up. For example, here in Kenya, where I am based in, we have endless organizations which are supporting entrepreneurs. So what you need to do is you need to join these hubs. So you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have everything figured out. As long as you know you want to become an entrepreneur, once you join these hubs or the organization, they usually have their own courses, their own forums, and this is how for you as an entrepreneur, you'll actually be able to develop your expertise. So for me, like here in Mombasa, where Afrifama is based, I'm part of like 3 forums. So we have CTG, this is across the Gap Hub, and they usually have their own circuit. We also have a new baby in town that is Starter House Hub, and is a collective. You'll see people such as Yashpal spearheading the interactions of entrepreneurs in the coastal region, bringing them together, exchanging ideas and expertise. And if you even go to Nairobi, I believe you'll find the same hubs or different hubs, but they are all collective. They are bringing entrepreneurs together. And even across Africa, in the major cities, I believe we have this kind of herbs. And guys, a friend of mine asked me, why would you waste your time going to this hub? The truth is, you actually are not wasting your time. If you are very careful, you'll use this hub to launch your entrepreneurial career. And in most cases, distance long enough, you'll actually be able to raise financing also using these vehicles, which we call entrepreneurship hubs, because they're able, other than giving you the trainings needed, they are also able to bring their own investors in the hub, and you have an opportunity. Well, I'm also conflicted when I'm talking the good thing about the hubs, because I also know some of the hubs, they actually don't live to their expectations. But for these, let's just leave it to the good hubs. So if you are looking to strengthen your entrepreneurial ability, then look for a hub near your town. See what's working. So if you are joining us, I hope this is making sense. And also you're not getting lost. We are discussing about how to strengthen your entrepreneurial ability, your skills, that is if you want to become an entrepreneur. Now, the next bit they're saying is you need to set aside small amount of money on daily or weekly basis to help finance your business. That is true. Remember when I said there is no business you can start without financing. And if anyone tells you you can start any business without financing, that's a fallacy. It's true. Or if you don't believe me, it's true. Why don't you let me know in the comment section if you can actually start a business without a financing, as I take a gulp of water. Because it's very interesting. This is something I've had in most cases, most trainers within the country. Someone will tell you, oh, you're actually not starting a business because you're afraid of starting a business. And when you say you don't have the financing, then someone will tell you, you don't need a financing to start a business. I think that's not true. That's a fallacy, because even for the MVP itself, and this is the most minimum viable product, you'll need to set aside the funds. You will need to buy something, even to pay for wages, even if it's minimal. So how do you do that? So assuming one of the key areas you identified area was financing, and you're right, do you have finances ready to start a business? And then you're like, no. Do you have a family member willing to support you? Then the answer was no. Do you have any external source to finance your idea? Then it was no. So this point is actually crucial for you, because you can actually say, well, I'm not ready to start my business right now. In the next 4 or 6 months or even 12 months, I'll be ready if I'm able to set aside funds, which ultimately they are going to help me start my own entrepreneurship journey. Because remember, there is no business, no startup that can start without business. So if we look back at Afrifama story, I remember the very first time I wanted to become an entrepreneur was when I actually graduated. So a bit of background is I actually spent close to 4 or 5 years in the business school. And funny enough is I started pure entrepreneurship. So all along the way, I knew if I graduated, then or upon graduation, then I would become an entrepreneur. But then we have a problem. When we graduated, we had zero capital, which means anybody in Kenya will tell you, unless you're coming from like the dynasties in code, that is like well up great families, then by the moment you're graduating from school, you don't really have anything other than your degree, unless you're working. Now, for my case, I didn't have anything. So I knew the only way for me to become an entrepreneur is to actually work. So I started looking for work opportunities. And my very first venture, I started by, I think I saved, I was employed for this amazing company in central Kenya. I was in like sales and marketing lead. So for 6, 7 months, I was able to save enough money, which ultimately funded my first venture. Yeah, and obviously, once that venture continued and it had its highs and eventually collapsed, then I also knew I also needed to start again. So what did I do? I gave myself 2 years, and actually that's how I ended up becoming here in the coastal region. I remember sharing this with my folks back in upcountry and telling them, hey, I want to start my last venture. I don't know why I said that, but since I don't have financing and you guys, you don't have funds, I'm going to look now for another employment. And for this one, I'm going to save, and this is my last employment. And I remember working close to more than a year and a half, and I had saved enough working money because, I mean, I was in a better position. There was nobody who was like needed my support or anyone. So, and this is why I actually advise for entrepreneurs: if you want to become, and don't quote me for this, the best time is you can take risk when you are young because it means you don't have any handles. But then if you don't take risk when you are young then and you are old enough, then this training is then very essential for you, or this kind of a life, because you know what you need to do so that you don't need to be like us who had to experiment all the way. So to cut the story short, yeah, 2 years in, I had enough funding, and that's how I launched Afrifama. And of course, not just my own funding. Then along the time, I've been able to raise financing from friends. The very key start way, have your friends, share your ideologies, share your visions, and ultimately see who is the best you can work with. And for them coming in, they don't just bring in their expertise, they also bring in their capital. And ultimately, yeah, we've also raised some grants along the way, as well as angel investment, and which is a great story to share sometimes. So for you to get started, the best way is you need to save. You need to like work and then be setting aside at least a bit of cash flows. Maybe give yourself a timeline, 5 to 6 months, then start with the most basic step, that is the MVP. And I mean minimum viable product, because you actually don't know if this idea is going to work. And this is going to be in our next discussion. So in case you're joining, thank you so much for joining in. And if you have any question, you can actually leave it in. All right. So as we go in, if now you've set aside the funds and you're ready to start, how else do you also strengthen your entrepreneurial ability or skill? Then you need to develop these skills and altitude described above the way we have by applying them, in your daily activities. So how do you do that? So the first thing they talk about is you need to increase your motivation and commitment by making a plan for the future. And it's true, guys. We can have this discussion for a very long time, but if you're not making a plan of going ahead and saying, this is what I want to do, this is what I will be doing in the next couple, maybe months or years, then it's not gonna work for you. So for you to be an entrepreneur, the only way you actually become good or you strengthen your abilities and skills is by making the plan and keeping the motivation alive. The next bit is you need to know, they're saying, when things go wrong, analyze what happened, improve your ability to learn from the mistakes. Yeah. In one of, I think was the fourth point last week, we mentioned the fact that you're going to become an entrepreneur is not a guarantee that is actually going to work for you. It's not a guarantee you're going to succeed. At some point, you're going to fail. So what are you going to do when you fail? Personally, I think I've failed in so many ways that I have no idea now how I'm even sane as a person. But because I have actually adapted the way of entrepreneurial building, the way of entrepreneurial strengthening, then I no longer see most of the failures as the final. No, I see them as a setback. So the same case for you, you need to sit down. All right, acknowledge you started the business idea, didn't work, then ask yourself, what exactly went wrong? And this is being objective. Try to analyze with no emotions, because once you become an entrepreneur, I'm not saying you leave emotions at the door, but I'm just saying you need to be objective. What exactly went wrong? Why is it that it didn't work out? Then in the next bit, that's the only way you can actually improve, because you started, didn't work. So, which means there was a deficiency in a certain skills area or ability. Then, for you to strengthen that ability is to pinpoint which area didn't work and then be able to reapply or do it differently in the next stage of the startup. Then the next thing is, what we've actually mentioned, they're saying, assess the problem, assess the solution, take the risk. Is as simple or as classic as that. Assessment, solutions, and then implement, because that's how entrepreneurship works. If you ask me today, how many failures have I had? I've actually gone bankrupt, I think twice. But then that hasn't meant that we've actually gone out of business. No, whereby you have literally have tried something, didn't work. So my first startup was like in 20, I think before I came to the coastal region, from 2020 to 2021, I was doing a business when I was still employed. Failed terribly. Lost the money, maybe 100 or 200 grams or something. The next time we tried again, then this is when we're starting Afrifama. Failed terribly after 1 year. But then we knew something, because remember, and it's very funny, guys, I have to mention, you'd never expect you'd fail, because like someone like me, I've spent close to 4 or 5 years in business school studying entrepreneurship. So failure for me was like, guys, this shouldn't be happening. But along the way, you have to acknowledge, even if you're going to do other things we have discussed earlier, you will fail. You can actually do everything right, but something somewhere which you might not have factored just happened, and it gives you the setback. So what you do and what makes you to go ahead is acknowledge it has happened, then assess the damage or assess the setback, and then develop the solution on how to forge the way forward. And that's what makes you become stronger, and that's what your entrepreneurial skills and ability are able to be strengthened. Then lastly, they're saying become more open to new ideas and other people's views. So I know when you start, or when you're getting started to become an entrepreneur, we have something we call being headstrong. So it's just what you think, it's you, nobody knows, it's just you or your way and you're in. So something funny is going to happen to you is you realize if you're starting up with people, working with people from diverse culture, even later on, and I know most of you guys are going to be successful, and even in your businesses attract even funds from outside, which means you'll start being open to people. You need to be going at discussions, which reminds me, like tomorrow I have this meeting with one of our external angel investors, and mostly in that is just to discuss what has worked in the last quarter, or this last quarter of the year, what we are working on or what didn't work. So for me as an entrepreneur, if I'm more of a headstrong and would be like, it's either my way or not, the funny bit is it's never going to work, guys. Because most of the time, even you as an entrepreneur is, you need to listen. You need to be open for ideas, because as I said, once you get starting sitting down with your maybe co-entrepreneurs, these are co-founders, maybe externals guys, you need also to listen to them, and eventually that's the only way you'll be able to gain new skill sets. You'll be able to become more aligned, not just to your own thinking, but to other people in your team. And that's how you are able to strengthen your ability. And that's how you are able to strengthen your skills. Because if you don't listen, if you don't or become open, then you just become strong-headed. And most of the cases, well, is both a good or a bad thing, it doesn't take you far. So this is the last bit. The only way for you to strengthen is sometimes be open, to other people's views, listen, and then get to know, okay, what's working. And that's why for me, I'm so excited when I start working with a new team or even external people, because it means it's not just me, it's also them. They got to question my ideas. They go to questions: why am I doing something? What is driving behind that? What if it doesn't work? And they also give their insights. And that's what actually I think build a great entrepreneur in the very end. So last bit but not, going again to the SIYB manual which we are using, they say, you might also want to think about finding a partner who complements your abilities. Instead of going into business entirely on your own, a partner might, apologies, we had a bit of setback with connections on my end. Internet decided to a little bit disappoint us. So, but we were actually coming close to the end, and if you actually stick to this live, thank you so much for joining in. The last bit which I wanted actually to add this is on how to strengthen your entrepreneurial abilities and skill is by ending with what the SIYB final outro, and they say, I'm going to read it and then I'm going to decode my own way from it. They say is there are a number of successful business people who did not have much experience, much practice in their particular field of business before starting their companies. Then what is important is to be aware of that areas that need improvement and develop a plan, which we actually call an action plan, and then to deal with this before the negatively affect your business. So the end of this is, while it's true, there are people who have started their businesses, become very expensive. I'll use some cases here in Kenya. We have a very interesting case in one of areas which I happen to come from, that is in the up countries in Moranga. There is actually one village, and in that particular village is actually known because of the number of actual billionaires is actually produced. So these they are known as like Rwadhia boys. So if you are in Kenya, you can actually Google that and find out about the issues about the Rwadhia boys. So you'll find the famous people such as the people who are heading or who started the Equity Bank, which is one of the biggest businesses in East and Central Africa. The people like Munga, the subsequent leaders, these are like Mwangi. These guys happen to come from this particular village. While I didn't want to go to the cases of like Mwangi, because the case for such a Mwangi is because he's more of a Ivy League educated CEO. So for him, he's actually steered the businesses ahead because of the trainings they've had. But in that particular village, the people who become successful is they didn't have an opportunity like of James Mwangi to go to uni, to study businesses, or even major. Well, it's true, there are those cases of people who didn't have everything figured out. What you need to know as an entrepreneur is, as your business grows, if you are not careful and you do not strengthen those key areas, they will ultimately come back and they will affect the way you do businesses. So you don't want that happening. So it's recommended that as an entrepreneur, you identify some of these key areas and ultimately try to find the solutions. Try to strengthen these key areas, because that's the only way you will ultimately grow as an entrepreneur. So to sum this up, we've talked about various ways you can actually strengthen your entrepreneurial abilities, your entrepreneurial skills, and this is if you're looking to get started into entrepreneurship. We have talked about learning, we have talked about enrolling for either physical or online stage, talked about having a mentor, we've talked about even going to work for as an intern. We have talked about joining small associations, that is entrepreneurship hubs in your area, and we've even talked about doing the research and the very best, what you need to do. So it's not a straight line. It's not like this is exactly all you need to become successful as an entrepreneur, but this is some of the things you need to do to become successful eventually as an entrepreneur. So I think I'll just end this live for today. It's still very early in the morning. I need to get started. Hopefully now tomorrow, again, same morning hours or in the afternoon, we will now cover the next bit, and that is what makes a business idea. So yeah, tuning up either the same hours tomorrow morning or in the afternoon, after you've assessed your abilities and you're like, okay, I'm ready, you've worked on the key areas you are supposed to improve and you feel confident to start your business, then what makes a business idea? I'll be happy to discuss this with you, and thank you for joining in. And if you have any questions, you can always leave them. I will always discuss them in my next live. So wherever you're watching from, have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.